The human brain is, well, complicated. It's made up of billions of neurons with trillions of connections, and new neural pathways are created every day in response to new experiences. Your brain today isn't the same as it was yesterday, and it won't be the same tomorrow. This means that everyone's brain is different. Every thought, every memory, every moment of your life, from your birth all the way until now, has shaped the structure of your brain in a way that makes it different from everyone else's brain. So, if this is true, then why do we assume that there's such a thing as a normal brain? And what does that mean for all the brains that are not normal? In this video, we explore the weird and wonderful world of neurodiversity. The word neurodiversity was first coined in the late 1990s. The idea behind it is rather simple. Neurodiversity is the observation that every human brain is different from every other human brain. How we think, how we perceive, and how we inhabit the world is different from person to person. Since the 1990s, the concept of neurodiversity has taken on a life of its own, and has been developed by neurodiversity activists and self-advocates alike. In the world today, as it has been for most of history, the dominant view has been what the philosopher Nick Walker calls the pathology paradigm. The pathology paradigm assumes that there's a normal or correct way for human brains to function, and any neurological differences are viewed as disorders, to be diagnosed, managed, and treated. Let's take autism as an example. The most recent edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5, characterizes autism in terms of deficits in social communication, restricted interests, and repetitive behaviors. This definition clearly falls under the pathology paradigm because it assumes that autistic people are deficient and lack some abilities that so-called normal people have. The pathology paradigm aligns with the biomedical model of disability, which suggests that disability is an intrinsic or inherent problem with the individual person. The neurodiversity paradigm, on the other hand, challenges the idea of a normal brain. Human brains are simply different from one another, and no one neurotype is better than any other. To return to autism, this means that autistic people communicate and interact with people in ways that differ from neurotypical norms. They're not deficient, just different. The neurodiversity paradigm aligns with the social model of disability, which suggests that disability is not always a problem with the individual person, but rather that there are various factors in the world that make someone disabled. The neurodiversity paradigm makes intuitive sense. What does it really mean to have a normal brain? Even neurotypical brains are vastly different from one another. As the philosopher Thomas Armstrong writes, "Search as you might, there's no brain that's been pickled in a jar in the basement of the Smithsonian Museum or the National Institute of Health or elsewhere in the world that represents the standard to which all other human brains must be compared." Given that this is the case, how do we decide whether any individual human brain or mind is abnormal or normal? If we accept the neurodiversity paradigm, then we come to realize that the world has been constructed with neurotypical brains in mind, and this can make life unnecessarily difficult for neurodivergent people. And in fact, some of the things that the medical establishment has called deficits aren't really deficits at all. The double empathy problem, proposed by the sociologist Damian Milton, makes this clear. Milton describes the double empathy problem as a disjuncture in reciprocity between two differently disposed social actors, which becomes more marked the wider the disjuncture in dispositional perceptions of the life world, an everyday and often traumatic experience for autistic people. Let's unpack that a little bit. In social communication, we tend to assume, if we even think about it at all, that social norms are objective, and that we merely follow them. But the concept of neurodiversity reveals this for what it really is, an assumption. The reason that neurotypicals are such experts in the social world is not because they have a normal brain. Rather, it's because the social world was created by them and for them in the first place. When a breakdown in communication occurs between a neurotypical person and an autistic person, it's easy for the neurotypical person to blame the autistic person and call them deficient. But there's more going on here. Instead of viewing autistic people as deficient because they fail to meet the standards of neurotypicality, Milton argues that neurotypical people similarly lack the ability to understand autistic norms. Or, more generally, any neurotype will struggle to understand any other neurotype to some degree. As soon as we move away from the view that neurotypicality is the only correct way for a human brain to function, then we come to realize that autistic people are not inherently deficient. The question then becomes, deficient in relation to what? And this question can be asked of any neurotype, even neurotypicality. Just as neurotypical brains are superior to autistic brains at a lot of tasks, autistic brains are superior to neurotypical brains at some tasks too. For example, autistic people tend to be better at pattern recognition, which makes them particularly well suited for work in computer science, mathematics, and engineering. Autistic people are also much more likely to be savants, where they demonstrate exceptional aptitude in a particular area like art or music. This doesn't mean that neurotypical brains are deficient in these areas. It just means that different kinds of brains have different kinds of strengths and weaknesses. And the concept of neurodiversity can help us to recognize this. We can even move beyond the individual and towards the human species as a whole. There have probably been neurodivergent people as long as there have been people. And if it was purely detrimental, then they probably wouldn't have stuck around for so long. But even if some neurodivergent traits are maladaptive at the individual level, they might be adaptive for the group as a whole. The philosopher Ginger Hoffman has argued that a more diverse group might be more likely to survive, since it has a variety of cognitive resources to draw on when it comes to problem solving. And as the journalist Harvey Bloom wrote in the article which popularized the word neurodiversity all the way back in 1998, neurodiversity may be every bit as crucial for the human race as biodiversity is for life in general. Who can say what form of wiring will prove best at any given moment? The neurodiversity movement is about more than recognition. It's about social justice. If the world has been created with neurotypical people in mind, then what this means in practice is that a whole lot of neurodivergent people are forced to live in a world that doesn't accommodate them or allow them to function properly. But instead of recognizing neurodiversity as natural and valuable, neurodivergent people are called deficient. But with the tools of the neurodiversity movement, we can question this assumption. The world didn't appear out of nowhere. We made it. And if we made it one way, then we can make it another way. If we reject the idea of a normal brain, then, as Walker writes, it turns out that you don't have a disorder after all. And it turns out that maybe you function exactly as you ought to function, and that you just live in a society that isn't yet sufficiently enlightened to effectively accommodate and integrate people who function like you. And that maybe the troubles in your life have not been the result of any inherent wrongness in you, and that your true potential is unknown and is yours to explore. And that maybe you are, in fact, a thing of beauty. The diversity of humankind is pretty much infinite, and so there are pretty much an infinite number of ways in which the world could be. Why don't we make it a world that works for everyone? Thank you very much for watching, peace and love, and I'll see you in the next video.